Hello and welcome back. This is our half-hour live in my office chance to talk about stuff. I'm going to answer your questions in a moment. 3 topics I want to get to right away. Number 1, the stock market. Some of you have written in very concerned. Number 2, Powerball. I just have something I want to say about Powerball and the huge Powerball thing. And I want to get to politics, and then the Oscars, and then your questions. Okay, stock market. Some of you are very concerned, obviously. You know, half of Americans have some money in the stock market, either through pension plans, IRAs, 401ks. Now, the typical American doesn't have that much in the stock market, but the typical American has not saved very much. So what people save is very often saved in the stock market. And what most financial types are going to tell you is the stock market over time continues to go up, and if you're patient, you'll do fine. I just want to show you something because you got to know the truth. This is a chart. This is the 20-year composite index. Can you see it? Okay. 20-year composite index. What I mean is it's a composite of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, Standard & Poor's, etc. It's the index of indexes, and it sort of shows you what has happened to the stock market over, well, this one is over the past 20 years. And this is this is adjusted for inflation. All right? This is important because this is if you take your money out in one year, let's say in 1999, put it in the stock market, what happened to your money? Well, as you can see, in December of 1999, there was a peak. And then what happened after the peak? What happened after the peak was the dot-com bubble burst, and then things got better, and then things got a little bit worse again. And then in June of 2007, there was a great time to buy. If you bought in June of 2007, actually, that's when, see, that my financial strategy is buy high, sell low. I'm being ironic. It's actually a bad time to buy because what happened was then the great housing bubble burst. And by November of 2008, there was a big trough. You all remember that. And things worked back gradually. But here's what I want to say. As of yesterday, adjusted for inflation, the money you put in the stock market back in 1999 would be worth just a little bit more than it was when you put it in. So since 1999, since actually January of 2000, the stock market has gained very, very little if you adjust for inflation. Now, this is not a happy story. It's not what your financial advisors tell you because they all want you to put in more money. But it is important. The Republicans continue to tell you that Social Security is a bad deal. You would do better investing your money in the stock market. This tells you that is untrue. That is a big, fat lie. The stock market has not done well over the past 15 years. The other thing that you should be thinking about, particularly if you are a baby boomer, and many of you are, 76 million of you born between 1946 and 1964, you know, the little bit you've saved and you put in the stock market, well, obviously it hasn't grown very much in real terms, and that's going to be a problem. It's a problem for baby boomers. That's going to put greater and greater strain on Social Security. It means that, for example, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren's proposal to expand Social Security, not contract it as the Republicans want to do, but actually expand Social Security, is a very good idea. It's going to be more and more important given what has happened to the stock market over the past, certainly since the year 2000. All right, I'm going to move on to topic number 2, which is Powerball, another kind of gambling. In fact, direct gambling. Stock market is indirect gambling. This is direct gambling. As you know, $1.5 billion big prize went to 3 people. But let me just, I don't want to rain on all these parades, but I'm raining on parades today. When you have a lottery, whether it's a gigantic lottery or it's a small lottery, this is the equivalent to what we call a regressive tax system. And by a regressive tax system, I simply mean that it takes more money out of the hands of poor people and lower income people than it does out of the hands of wealthy people to support government. And 50% of all of the money that went into Powerball, that people bought, they bought tickets, they put money into the Powerball sweepstakes for 44 states. 50% of that went to the winners, but 50% of that did not go to the winners. A lot of that went to government, to the people who are actually marketing and administering Powerball, which means your odds of winning at Powerball or any state lottery are relatively low. I mean, the amount you spend times the odds of you winning make it a lousy deal. And unfortunately, it is poorer people in America and lower income people in America that, because they are hard up, obviously, by definition, because they need to at least think that there's a possibility of getting a sweepstakes, winning a sweepstakes, they are the ones who are putting more of their money into this regressive tax. If people understood the odds, if we didn't have this kind of regressive tax, then the poor would not be supporting so much of state government. All right. I'm interested in your views on this, and we're going to have, in fact, you're going to hopefully write in with your questions in a moment. I want to get to topic number 3, which is politics. I don't know how you felt about the State of the Union if you saw it. Obama's address, President Obama's address Tuesday night, I thought it was terrific. It was upbeat at a time when so many Americans feel downbeat and are worried about the economy and are worried about their own personal finances and are worried about terrorism. I think he struck exactly the right note. And it also was a clear statement that we have to stop the hatefulness, the xenophobia, the kind of bigotry that the Republicans are pumping out there, particularly Donald Trump. I thought Nikki Haley's response, the Republican response, was extremely good. Particularly, it was not a subtle dig at Donald Trump in terms of talking about stopping that kind of hatefulness. Tonight, the Republicans are going to be debating. Obviously, everybody is going to keep their eyes on Cruz and on Trump, and to a lesser extent on Rubio. I don't expect Trump to do anything more or less than he's been doing before. He's going to repeat the same mantra. That is, we've got to get rid of illegal, he calls them illegal aliens. He doesn't call them undocumented. He wants to create fear, and he wants to build on fear. And that's what he's doing. He's doing it very successfully. His lead is growing in the Republican contest. Ted Cruz has a little bit of a problem. Today's New York Times, if you have not read it yet, says that his first and last senatorial contest in Texas, he actually relied to a great extent on a loan from Wall Street banks, which is odd because Ted Cruz, his latest commercial about Donald Trump, says he's too much, he speaks like a New Yorker, he acts like a New Yorker, he's too New York-ish. Well, if borrowing a lot of money for your campaign from big Wall Street banks is not acting like a New Yorker, whatever that means, I don't know what is. Obviously, there is a lot of hypocrisy here. Ted Cruz, if you look at his record carefully, you might become even more concerned than you are about Donald Trump. With regard to Marco Rubio, they're going to be attacking him over immigration tonight. And one of the big ironies is that Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio are both immigrants, or at least children of immigrants directly. Their parents came from Cuba. They came under special provisos that allows Cubans to come here much more easily than many others from other nations, either as refugees or as another status. That's how their parents got here. I wish somebody would just ask both of them about Cuba and Cuban refugees, or Cubans who have left Cuba. There is, again, a kind of mounting, an extraordinary degree of hypocrisy in the whole immigrant debate. What you need to keep your eyes on and also understand is that there are more so-called undocumented or illegal immigrants leaving the United States these days than are coming into the United States. We have that very, very well documented. The other thing that you need to know that Donald Trump has been wrong about, and he's been wrong about so many things, he's lied through his teeth about so many things, is that actually Mexican Mexicans who are coming here illegally and are not committing more crimes than people who are born here in the United States. In fact, the FBI released data recently showing that people who are undocumented and in the United States are more law-abiding than people who are born in the United States and are full-fledged Americans. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand why. They would rather not be deported. All right, Oscars. Can we move on to Oscars? Are you ready? Changing tone a little bit. These are the nominees, at least just announced for the Oscars. I don't know how many of these you've seen. Bridge of Spies, Brooklyn, Mad Max, and The Martian, The Revenant, Room, Spotlight, The Big Short. I've seen a few of them. I'd be interested in what you think, who you think, which movie you think ought to win. I've seen some of these. I love Brooklyn. I just think Brooklyn is fabulous. I thought The Big Short was dynamite. Those are my candidates. I was struck by the number of these that are kind of apocalyptic or really downers. The Room, I think, essentially is an upper, but it's a story about somebody who was kidnapped and put in the basement for years. The Revenant is a pretty dark movie. And The Martian, I guess, is an upbeat movie when you come to think of it, but the storyline is pretty rough. There's Matt Damon left on Mars. I could think of some other people who we might want to leave on Mars, come to think of it. The Bridge of Spies, Tom Hanks, I think, did a very good job. That's about YouTube, Gary Powers. A number of these are also about history. The Bridge of Spies, The Big Short, anyway, I gave you my picks. I'd be interested in your picks. We can talk about them. The Oscars do reflect sort of what's on people's minds, the values of America. That wonderful movie 3 years ago called Inequality for All didn't quite make it to the Oscars, which shows you that the Oscars don't always get it right. All right, your questions. We're now time for your questions, just on time. And let's have the first question. Katya Walker, how can we stop the effects of Walmart, which is destroying our small towns and creating ripple effects that damage the economy at all levels? Well, Katya, there is an Our Walmart movement with regard to raising the wages of Walmart, but you're asking a slightly different question, which is, how do you stop Walmart? Well, one way you stop Walmart, very clearly, is through your city councils. And, many communities say, no, we don't want Walmart to come here and basically drain business out of our main street and leave our towns as ghost towns. We don't believe that Walmart is good for our community. Your city council, your city government can make that decision, can zone Walmart out of existence. Walmart has got to have permission to come into your city. Once it's there, you have your options are very limited. But exercise your right to keep Walmart out. All right. Next question. Ramsel Ruiz asks, what is the model most likely to follow capitalism? Or do you think capitalism is here forever? Ramsel, capitalism is basically the economic system that is in place all around the world. Even communist China, allegedly communist China, is a capitalist, becoming more and more capitalist in terms of private property and the kind of so-called voluntary exchange of goods. And the issue is not, do you like capitalism or the alternatives to capitalism, because nothing has worked really except capitalism. But the more important question is, what kind of capitalism? Is it going to be the individualistic, hard-driving, Wild West capitalism of the United States? Or is it going to be the kind of soft capitalism of Europe? Or is it going to be somewhere in between? And I think it's important that there's a book around here someplace. you might want to check. All right, next question. Dave Campbell. If we increase taxes on America's big corporations, how can we incentivize so that they don't bolt or set up shop somewhere else? Dave Campbell, we cannot stop corporations from leaving the United States. I mean, Pfizer did this, or is doing this, is in the process of doing this, a big drug company. But what we can do is make sure that companies that do leave the United States no longer get the benefits of being American companies. That is, the benefits of having the State Department in the United States go to bat for them abroad, the benefits of getting access to public research and development that the government does a great deal of, the benefits of basically the Buy America program for the military and for other programs which require that the company be an American, U.S.-based company. So let companies leave if they don't want to pay taxes, but if they're not going to pay taxes and support our country, they're not going to get the benefits of being American companies. Okay, Betty Ann Clark. Can taxes be simplified and made more fair? Yes, Betty Ann, they can, but the question is really, first of all, let me just say, Betty Ann, don't fall for the Republicans' flat tax. They say that's a simple tax. Yes, it's simple, but if the tax is flat, it means that people at the top are going to be paying less, because right now we have a graduated progressive income tax which is supposed to require that people who are richer pay a higher rate than people who are poor. So a flat tax is going to actually reduce the tax rates of people at the top and increase the tax rates of people at the bottom who right now pay a very, very low tax rate, if at all. So what we need is a very simplified, progressive, that is graduated tax. Maybe you have 5 different brackets. And reduce the amount of deductions and tax credits. That's where you get all the loopholes. Get rid of the loopholes. I mean, you have loopholes for particular industries, for particular occupations. You've got the hedge fund loophole, the carried interest loophole. Get rid of all those loopholes. Have 5 or 6 brackets, depending on income, and keep it that simple. All right? Okay, John Robbins. John, you ask, what mass citizens movement do you currently see having some good inertia, having some momentum? Well, there are a number of citizens movements right now. The fight for 15, for a $15 minimum wage is actually gaining support, gaining ground. It's had tremendous impact. You know, if you look at what's happened in Los Angeles and Seattle, in San Francisco, in New York, that fight for 15 is actually pushing a lot of states and cities to move toward a $15 minimum wage, which is only fair. What else is happening? Black Lives Matter is also, I think, gaining more and more traction because more and more people are understanding that police brutality, also mass incarceration, is hurting, especially hurting young black men. And we've got to be aware of it. Black Lives Matter is making us aware of it. And I think also Bernie Sanders' campaign is a form of mass movement. I mean, that comes directly, it's the lineal descendant of the Occupy movement, and it is the progressive idea that we've got to tackle the takeover of our economy and the takeover of our democracy by big business, big corporations, Wall Street, and billionaires. That, to me, is one of the most important movements going. Next question. Eddie Cleveland. Should the Fed be abolished or dramatically changed? Eddie, the Federal Reserve Board is doing, in my view, a fairly good job. I disagree with their recent decision to raise interest rates because there's no inflation around. I don't want to see the economy slow because I don't want unemployment to increase. That hurts poor people and lower middle class and working class people the most. I think it also ought to be more transparent. I think that the vote recently in the Senate, supported by Bernie Sanders and many, many Republicans, for more transparency of the Fed is a step in the right direction. But I don't think it ought to be abolished. I mean, you need some monetary policy so that when the economy is slowing, there is the possibility of reducing tax rates, making it easier for businesses and people to get loans so that they can keep the economy going. Next question. Leo Green. You ask, are there any other senators or congressmen who you feel, that is, I feel, would run on the same platform as Bernie Sanders? And who are they? Well, the most obvious is Elizabeth Warren. A Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren ticket would be pretty impressive, would it not, Leo? Next question. Gina Norris, you ask, has U.S. unemployment, or has U.S. employment been as good as it's being portrayed? Because from where I sit, it has not. Gina, you're right. I mean, if you just look at the job numbers, the numbers of new jobs, it's a very impressive record. We have basically created a huge number of new jobs, averaging about 250,000 a month for the last 6 months. That's a good record. But the number of jobs is not the only thing we need to look at. And if you look at the quality of jobs, that story is very, well, it's a challenging story. I don't want to be negative, but it's not good. The typical new job being created pays less than the jobs that were lost during the Great Recession. The median wage for new hires is dropping. The median wage, even of college students who are going out and getting jobs, over the last 5 years, the median wage of college students getting that first job has been dropping, adjusted for inflation. And then you also, on top of that, you've got a huge number of Americans who are too discouraged to look for work, don't even show up in the unemployment figures, and many people who are working part-time who would rather be working full-time. So don't just look at the job numbers. Also look at the quality of the jobs and also how much slack there is in the labor market, and there is a lot of slack in that labor market. Tony Bustamante, you want to know, what is your take on the causes of the Bundy occupation of the native preserve in Oregon and the military and the militia movement? Tony, that so-called Bundy occupation, that is about, they say it's about getting federal lands back to the people. Baloney. That's about getting subsidized. The federal government right now provides land, people who are cattle grazers, farmers, people who want mineral rights, with a tremendous deal. These are all discounted. These are all subsidized. If you are a farmer or a cattle rancher or you want mineral rights, you can get them much better deal from the federal government than you can if you are out in the market buying from people who actually owned that land. What the Bundy group wants is to basically get even more subsidies. They want the federal government to turn over that land to the states and presumably have the states, because of their political power in those states, to give all of that land to the cattle grazers, to the farmers, to the mineral rights people, and at an even greater subsidy. I mean, talk about a land grab. This is all about money and greed. Tessa Orbach. Imagine Bernie wins Iowa and New Hampshire. What would that mean? Do you think he would then have a chance? Well, I think Bernie has a chance right now, and if he won Iowa and New Hampshire, that would certainly give him a great deal of momentum. Most importantly, it would mean that the media, the national media, would have to stop ignoring Bernie Sanders. I mean, if he wins Iowa and New Hampshire, he is a force to be reckoned with, and the national media starts covering him. That means more people know of Bernie Sanders, they know what he represents, they know his policies, and that would be a big help heading into South Carolina and Super Tuesday. Next question from Michael Meeks. asks, if the Supreme Court overturns union dues in the public sector, will it affect the private sector? Michael, it certainly lays the groundwork for the 5 Republican appointees on the Supreme Court to attack private sector unions the same way that they're setting up their attack on public sector unions. Basically, they're saying with public sector unions have no constitutional right. In fact, they're trampling on the constitutional rights, the court wants to say, from the basis of, and I'm assuming on the basis of their questioning with the Fredericks case that came up Monday. The court, 5 Republican members of the court, want to say that public sector unions cannot demand dues from public sector employees. Now, if you can't demand dues, basically what happens is that there is no incentive on anybody who gets the benefit of the union in terms of bargaining for better wages and working conditions. Nobody has an incentive to pay their dues because they know that everybody else will pay their dues, which means nobody's going to pay their dues. But what's going on in so-called right-to-work states. It's not right to work, it's right, basically, not to pay your dues and get something for free. But the court would like, the 5 Republican members of the court, and I'm not being disrespectful when I say this, they want to destroy unions in America. Every one of them wants to. This is part of the Republican agenda. This is part of the agenda of the people who sponsored them, who sponsored their nominations to the court, the Koch brothers, among others. Will Mienis, I think that's how I pronounce it. Did I pronounce it correctly, Will? What is your favorite book behind me? My favorite book behind me. Well, let me look and see. Other than Saving Capitalism, which I think is a very good book. This is a pretty good book. I like it. The Rise of the Trading State by Richard Rosecrans. It's a good book. Other books that I haven't actually looked at the bookshelf behind me. There are. This book is a very, very interesting book. You might want to take a look at it. It's called Aftershock. It's by me too. But I don't just have my books on my shelf. Well, you know what we'll do next time, next week when we do this, I will show you, we'll go around my office and my bookshelves, and I would like to talk to you about books that I recommend that you read. All right, next question. Ian Russell, and we're running out of time. Ian, this has got to be the last question, I'm afraid. The ever-evolving robotics industry is going to make human workers obsolete. What can we do about the job shortage in the future? Very interesting and important question. In fact, we're considering doing a video about this, Ian. What I say in Saving Capitalism, and I'm going to a spoiler alert here because I say it in the last couple of chapters. What I say in Saving Capitalism is that inevitably robotics and very advanced software is going to take away more and more and more good jobs. Right now, we are on the verge of having robotics and advanced software take away professional jobs. Now, there have been years robotics and software and automation have taken away relatively menial, repetitive type jobs, but we are on the verge of them taking away jobs that really require a lot of thought, a lot of skill. And when that happens, you can imagine the public outcry. I mean, everything from healthcare industry and a lot of education and a lot of lawyers and accountants and even bankers, they are all going to be replaced by technology. Imagine the hue and cry. What are we going to do? Well, here's the irony. If people don't have jobs, they can't afford to buy all this wonderful new technology. In fact, I had here in my office about 6 months ago the CEO of one of the biggest high-tech companies in America asking me that very question. He said, well, what happens when we get to a point where our company and other companies take away all the jobs? Who's going to buy our products? The answer is we've got to come up with some system of recirculating the money. Because if all the money goes to the handful of people who own the patents to the robotics and the advanced software, there's not going to be any money left in circulation for people to buy. So the idea I have come up with, now there are other ideas as well, is that a small percentage of the royalties from patents that are going to be the patents of the future, that are the technology of the future, a small percentage of those royalties go into a fund supporting a basic minimum income. More to come on that. But first of all, I want to thank my terrific assistants, Zoe Beck and Yael Bridge, who have helped me with this. You can, by the way, you can watch this later. Some people say, write in and say, when am I going to, I missed you because I was working. You can watch this later on this Facebook page, and also join us next week at the same time. Give us your feedback. What can we do better? What can we, what's not working? If you like it, tell us to keep going. Thanks, and see you next week.